Hi, this is Jesse and you're watching Street Photography with Jesse Acosta. And this is the gear special I've been promising you guys about. We're gonna go over the equipment that I use and just tell you a little bit of why I chose the gear that I've chosen. It doesn't mean that you have to use the exact same gear, but I'm just gonna show you whatever works for me. And hopefully you can make a decision of as to what equipment might work for you. So let's get started. Alright, so when I started doing photography, I bought a digital camera, and I'll just give you a brief information on that, or a brief story. I had extra cash. I was like, what should I do with it? So to make a long story short, I decided to buy a digital camera. So I started doing that, and then I started taking photos at work and stuff, and people would ask me like, oh man, you take good photos or whatever, and they actually would hire me to do photography, not street photography, but just to do photography. And that's how kind of the way I got into in photography. But it wasn't until recently, and it was 2013, that I did some photography, like street photography. And the first time I did that with film. And the reason I got into film was that, well, one day I had an old camera laying around, and for the Christmas vacation I decided I would buy a roll of film and just try it out. So I tried it out, went out there to park, took some photos, and I really kind of liked it. It was slide film. I used that and I really liked it, so I was like, alright, I'm gonna try it again. So I was telling my father this. He said, well, I have a film camera somewhere, and I said, well, let's take it out and see, maybe I can use it. So he goes out and he pulls out this little number, which is the Yashica Electro 35. And I was like, oh cool. So I could see the aperture ring and all that and ISO, but I couldn't find the shutter, like where do you set the shutter and stuff. So I did some researching on the internet, found out that this is what is called an aperture priority camera. So if you shoot digital, you'll notice whether you shoot Canon or Nikon, you have a setting for aperture priority. You set up your aperture, and then the camera selects the shutter speed for you. That's what it means. So this is the way this camera works. You set up your aperture and your ISO depending on the film that you're using, and the camera does the shutter for you. Now it does the shutter up to 1/500th of a second. So if you're in bright light and you're gonna do 2.8 and you're at ISO 400, chances are you're gonna be overexposed. So the way you can tell, you only have two lights: an orange light, which means slow shutter. So if there's not enough light and you take a photo and the orange light comes up, your image might be blurry unless you have a tripod. Or the other light is red, and if you take a picture and it's red, it means that it's going to be overexposed. So your shutter speed needs to be at higher rate than 1/500th of a second. So when you take the photo, it's only going to do 500. So if it needs to be at 1,000 or higher, you're going to get an overexposed image. So when you're looking through the viewfinder and you do the shutter halfway, it's gonna tell you orange or red, and then you can adjust your aperture accordingly. So if you're doing street photography, that it makes it kind of fast, because you don't have to worry about all the settings. You set your ISO, it's gonna stay the same because that's the type of film you have, and then you do your aperture, and that can vary, but the camera is going to do the shutter for you, and it's going to give you a warning whether you're over or under. So that's pretty cool. So all I needed to do with this camera was to find the battery. They don't make the battery for this camera anymore, so I had to improvise, and I bought I think it's a 3 volt or 6 volt, I don't remember, and I put some foil paper because those were like taller, and it worked, and you get to focus manually. And if you don't know what the rangefinder camera is, in the center you have two, like a rhombus, and two rhombuses in the center, and then whenever they line up, as you turn your focus, that means that you're in focus. So you'll see kind of like overlapped images of the center of your whatever you're framing, and then once they overlap, that means you're good to go. So when you're using, and this is more of a theory on photography, so if you're using a smaller aperture like f11, f16, you don't have to worry too much to be tag sharp on your focusing, because pretty much anything from, I don't know, like 5 feet to infinity is gonna be in focus. So that's why whenever I shoot film on the street, I try to use ISO 400 film, and I change between 5.6 and f11, sometimes f16 if it's real bright. But usually when I'm doing the streets downtown, there's a lot of buildings so they cast a shadow or they cover the sun. So usually it's within 5.6 to f11, and I'm in the safe range. I found out with the ISO 400. So that's what those are my settings for this camera. So I used this camera for about 4 weeks, and then I was like, well, what if something were to happen to the camera? And not that I couldn't use a digital, but I was like, I always need to be prepared. So I went out on eBay and bid on camera, and I won it. And I think final price was like $24. And I was like, all right. So I got it, and everything was as described. The camera was in good shape, and it was working, and it was this camera. And as you can tell, they're almost identical from the front, from the side, except for the pattern on the black stuff here. This one looks newer, but I think this one's actually older than this, but this one was in a much better shape. I started using this one after I got it, and it was the same battery, so I just took it from this one and put it in here. And I decided to put this one in storage. Well, not in storage, but just I stopped using it. I have it as a backup, but since my dad gave it to me, it has some sort of emotional value to me. So I just keep it here in my room, and I don't use it anymore. It still works, but if I have to use it, if this one breaks, I'll probably use it. But then I have other cameras that I'm going to show you. So this is my main camera for black and white film. I always put black and white film with this camera, and it's still rangefinder like this one. And as a matter of fact, this one has film right now, so I'm not going to take a photo. But I want to take a photo with this one because I want to show you the sound that it makes, and I'll go with every camera that I have so you can see the shutter sound. So this one I already cocked the shutter, so here we go. See, that's kind of faint. I'll go again. I think that makes more of a sound. So if you're taking a photo and you don't want the people to know, I mean, you can take the photo and wait until you wind until you're farther away, and you can wind the lever. So that's the shutter sound for this camera. Next, we're gonna look at the next camera that I got after this one. So the next camera I bought after the second Yashica was my Panasonic Lumix GF1, and I bought this off of eBay also. I think I got this for $166 without the lens. So I decided to just buy it new, and the lens was like $350. So for a little bit over $500, you have a very, very nice camera. Now for street photography, some people like it because it's small, it's all dark, and especially this lens. This is a 20mm 1.7. It's a fast lens. It all depends also on the autofocusing on your camera. It's not that fast, but it still works. Because of the conversion, a 20mm is equivalent to 40mm, which is the same focal length on the Yashica lens. So this one I got it, and I used it for video. Time to time I take it on the street also. This is kind of like my backup camera, so I have another digital, and if that one runs out of batteries or whatever, I don't have extra batteries, I'll just switch cameras. It's a very fun camera to have and to shoot with. So I'll do the shutter sound on this one, see if you can hear it. So it's not as loud, but I mean it's not as quiet as the Yashica, but still a very good camera for street photography. And the video coming out of this camera, it's awesome too. So if you can get your hands on one, I truly recommend it. So that's my digital, and let's go over to the next camera I got after this one. So the next camera I got, you've seen a video of it on YouTube. It's the $3.99, I call it, the $3.99 camera from Goodwill, and that's where I bought it, at Goodwill. I was just out there checking stuff out, and I saw the camera, and I tested it. It had a battery, so I bought it, and it's this one, and it's film. So you just load the film. It knows how to read the ISO for you. You don't have to do any settings other than turn it on and tell it whether you want the flash or no flash. So I know I'm gonna be on the street, so I don't want to flash. I don't want to scare people. So I put it on no flash at all times. And this is kind of like my point and shoot. And you'll see some of the photos I've taken with this camera that I actually use. I like them enough to post on my Flickr account. So it's kind of like a point and shoot. It does some focusing, but on its own. So usually what I do, I have this one like so, and then I have my rangefinder on a strap here. And if I don't have, something's happening, and if I don't have time to react with this one, because remember this one I have to set up my aperture and do my focusing manually, I'll just grab this, bring it to my eye, compose, and take the shot. And this one is a little bit louder just because of the winding mechanism. The actual photo is not, it's not too bad, the actual sound. There you go again. It's the winding sound that gives you away. But it's you don't have to do anything than just kind of point it where you want to shoot, and it does it for you. Very easy, very fast, and it has like a little telezoom setting, which I've used in one photo, but usually I just use it like this because it's the equivalent of 35 millimeter. So it's kind of like, I think that's the preferred focal length by most street photographers, 35. I usually put color film on this. So my kind of thought process on that is I load the Yashica with black and white. That's my main camera, and then anything that I want to take a photo of that has to do with colors, I would take with this. So if there's something, an outfit that comes out, I'll take a photo with this. So anything that color, where I'm featuring the color on the photo, not so much the subject, like in the black and white photos, I'll use this camera. So let's go to the next camera I got. Okay, so after that camera, I went out and there was some rain on one of my outings, and I decided that it would be a good idea to have something that would be weatherproof. So I couldn't find, well, I really didn't try finding a weatherproof film camera, and if I did, it was probably going to be too expensive. So I just decided to buy a newer digital camera, and I ended up using or buying the Olympus OMD or EM5, which I'm sharing the lens with my GF1. It's the same mount, so I only have one lens for the two cameras. But like I said, on the other one's my backup. So if I'm shooting with this and it runs out of batteries, I just switch lenses and then I'm ready to go. At first, to be honest, I didn't like it. It was, I don't know, there's a lot of settings, and it took me a while to tune the settings to my liking and make it workable for me on the street. The lens is too slow. Olympus claims that they have the fastest autofocus system, and I've tried it with another lens. It's an Olympus lens, one of the new ones, and it is very fast. So I'm probably gonna eventually buy that lens and take advantage of the speed. With this lens, since this is an older lens and this is a Panasonic lens on an Olympus body, it's not as fast, but it works, and I kind of gotten used to it, and I like the viewfinder on this. You can customize it, so I customize it to my likings. I customize the buttons to my likings also, and the settings, whether it goes to sleep or it shuts off. All that has to be fine-tuned for street photography. I found some settings that work for me. So I'm very happy with that, with this camera now. The image quality, I never had any complaints. I mean, I have a Canon 40D, a DSLR, and the image quality on this camera, even though it's a micro four thirds, it's better. I think it's better than the DSLR. So it's kind of like having an older DSLR. Quality is amazing on a little package. And it's weatherproof. That's the reason I got it. So very happy with my camera now. It took me about 3 months. The image quality was what kind of like kept me from sending it back, and then I kind of learned how to use it. And every camera has its little quirks and stuff that you gotta get used to it. So it took me a little bit longer to get used to this camera, but now I love it. One thing that I tell you is that I like the screen. It goes like that, and then whenever you turn it on, whenever you're shooting photos, you can actually tell it to take a photo when you press the screen. So you can be standing up with this camera right here on just looking at people, and then wherever you touch it, it's gonna take the photo, and it's gonna focus and take the photo. So, or if you pre-focus, it's just gonna do the photo. So let's hear that shutter sound again, because this one is one of the quietest I've seen. So here we go. That's quiet. I would recommend it, except it's $995 without the lens. It's about $1,250 or $1,299 with the lens. So compared to the $24 that I paid for my Yashica, which is my primary camera, that's a big difference. Now you have to kind of like put everything in a balance, because I do spend a lot of money on film for that camera. So even though the camera was $24, each roll is about $6 to $7 plus another $6 to develop it. So every time I roll 36 photos, I'm paying like $11 total, or $12, which is a lot of money. So if you do the math, I'm not sure how many photos that would be equivalent where you would break even by using a digital camera. So I'll let you guys do the math on that.